What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Fringe. Alberta Independence is still a hot topic in the country. In fact, a lot of people saying out east, hey, it's never going to happen. It's a pipe dream. It's not going anywhere. I tell them, if it wasn't going to happen, why are so many people fighting it? Why do we have so many counter petitions trying to stop Alberta Independence? The problem, when you look at Brexit, they had a very strong silent majority when it came to the actual vote process. And one thing that Tom Lukaszuk, many others across, Alberta as well as the country aren't taking into consideration is there's a very large silent majority in Alberta. And in fact, I can tell you right now that the sentiment across the province from the majority, aside from major municipalities like Calgary and Edmonton, where again, the woke typically tend to speak up a little bit more, are convinced it's time to go. Danielle Smith certainly reads the room. And I want to talk about a huge win for Alberta Independence. As the title says, massive support coming in from Danielle Smith that essentially shows why she has not signed counter petitions, why she is not giving her 2 cents on anything and allowing Albertans to decide their future. Now, if you've looked at Alberta Next panels, despite Edmonton being a complete shit show, you'll notice that Danielle has been taking time to talk about things like privatized police force, replacing the RCMP. And while there's been many controversies surrounding that, I'm not going to get into it. But we also have the Alberta Pension Plan. One of the things that came up in the Alberta Pension Plan and the push for it, I'm going to get to. First, I want to talk about the home invasion that happened in Eastern Canada earlier this week, where a man in Ontario was jailed and charged for defending his home. Now, if you join me on Wednesday night's live stream of Unhinged Fringe, we talk about that. We talked about the importance of being able to defend your home. In fact, many Canadians have talked about castle law. You've got this post coming out from Mario Zelaya, Danielle Smith, giving a quote based on a question asked about what happens if this were to take place in Alberta? Where does she stand? Now, you've got virtue signaling closet liberal, widespread liberal at this point, Doug Ford, coming out stating that, the system's broken. Well, Doug, your system put him in jail for defending his household. I'm sorry, but we need to, it's not castle law. We need to institute the FAFO law in Calgary, which is F around and find out. Danielle Smith certainly gives her 2 cents on this. And if anybody thought Danielle doesn't back proper laws, if she's going to march along to the beat of everybody else's drum or follow Carney's fife, it's not happening. Take a listen.
I wanted to get your reaction to an incident, I believe in Lindsay, Ontario, where a man is now facing criminal charges for defending himself from a home intruder. What are your thoughts on that situation?
Well, if you don't want to get shot or beaten up, don't break into people's houses. Pretty straightforward. We had a similar incident in Alberta where somebody defended themselves, and they determined that there was not a reasonable likelihood of conviction, because we do expect that people are going to use a reasonable use of force to defend themselves and their families, and I support that.
I support that. Now, I know the audio isn't great there, but do you hear what she says? And if you didn't, because of the audio, she says, don't break into somebody's house if you don't want to get beat up. She says there's a similar situation in Alberta where they were told that they would have a hard time convicting of criminal charges because you have the right to use a certain amount of force to defend yourself if somebody breaks into your home, and she supports that. Now, that goes against what Canada's pushing for. Again, Doug Ford's willing to allow criminal charges and then says, well, our system's broken. Our country's broken because of Team Canada. If you needed more push of that, Danielle Smith, again, getting a lot of scrutiny throughout her Alberta Next panels over one thing that a lot of people keep saying, a lot of seniors particularly are nervous about, which is the Canada Pension Plan. I've seen signs posted all over Alberta during election times or by-election times saying, hands off our CPP. CPP investment posts only a 1% net return in Q1 of 2026. That doesn't even combat inflation, folks. So while people are asking, and I've seen people ask in the comments, what happens if Alberta does get a pension plan? What happens if I've contributed to Canada Pension Plan and Alberta shifts that over to the Alberta Pension Plan? Well, first off, if Alberta were to claim independence and not have its own pension plan at the time, you've contributed into the Canada Pension Plan. Keep in mind that you can claim your Canada Pension Plan whether you live in Nicaragua or London or Canada. You have the right to claim what you've given into. Now, Danielle Smith has said many times, if she puts together an Alberta pension plan, it'll either give the same, if not more, to those who are contributing or have contributed. And she stands behind making sure that our seniors are looked after. But if we're only getting a 1% return, and I'm going to go into this article a little bit. Now, stay with me here, folks, if you've ever wondered about pension plans, because one thing that's discussed in the deep dive here is what the last 10 years has done. Keep in mind, this is the Trudeau era. For those who are so worried about Alberta forming its own pension plan, Danielle has advocated for this. This is a strong push for Wexit, for Alberta Independence. Canada Pension Investments closed the first quarter of fiscal 2026 with the net assets of $731 billion, up 2.4% from $714 billion last quarter. The fund earned $7.5 billion in net income and received $9.8 in net transfers from the Canada Pension Plan, so 56.6% of the asset increase came from contributions. That's a red flag. The quarter's net return was 1% after expenses. Public stocks rebounded late in the period and energy holdings helped, but a weaker US dollar versus the Canadian dollar crippled results. Do you see the Canadian dollar pairing or parring with the US dollar anytime soon? This is going to be the norm for a while. Shifting trade dynamics and broader geopolitical uncertainty fueled renewed volatility. CEO John Graham said, stressing diversification and a long-term focus. So you've got Mark Carney across the country refusing to greenlight projects, just talking word salad. He's not able to come up with a deal with Trump. We're getting completely battered by the U.S. economy, rightfully so, by the way. You know, there's nothing wrong with the United States saying, well, Canada doesn't want to do anything, so we'll do it. They have every right to take advantage of that. It's just money at the table. Long-run figures were steady but split by accounting design. Here it is. The 10-year annualized net return for the whole fund was 8.4%. So that's less than 1% every year divided over 10. So during the Trudeau era of government, the whole fund had an 8.4% return. That's a terrible investment. I don't know about you guys, but 8% over 10 years is not what I would call favorable. It says on a real basis, the base Canada Pension Plan's 10-year return was 5.7%, comfortably above the chief actuary's 3.69 long-term assumption. Additional CPP's real return since 2019 launch was 2.5%, below its 3.27 assumption. The problem we have here is that the government wants to continue spending, the government wants to continue governmenting, while we pay into programs, while we pay taxes, while we essentially are the living poor. People who work jobs are giving half of their salaries to taxes, to Canada Pension, to fees, GST, everything else. Danielle Smith has a real plan when she talks about the Alberta Pension Plan. Alberta has a real plan when Alberta Prosperity Project talks about the value of freedom. Billions of dollars that no longer goes out in transfer payments, that is kept inside Alberta to fund things like hospitals, education, pension plans, police forces, money that is no longer being seeped out of the country, and given to the government to waste. For anybody who says that independence isn't worth discussing or that it's a pipe dream, it's a nothing burger, this all revolves around money for the most part. And what people have to start asking themselves is, you can scrutinize Alberta, you could scrutinize Saskatchewan or any other province that wants to talk about leaving Canada Confederacy for its own independence, for its own success in the future. But one thing you should ask yourself when looking at the collection of tax dollars, the collection of pension plan funds, the collection of anything the government has ever taken from you, carbon taxes, GST, HST throughout provinces, has it ever been put to something beneficial? Have you ever seen the government do anything beneficial with your tax dollars that actually says, yeah, I don't mind paying that? I'm going to give you an example of one of the reasons I don't mind the taxes that I pay. Where I live, my property taxes are significantly higher than when I lived in Calgary. However, the place that I live in looks after its greenery. It maintains its roads. It cuts its grass. It has security cameras in place for people's safety. It has police available. It has resources available. There are problems within the municipality that I currently live in. However, when I see that the money is being used to a certain extent, I know there's people who live in Spruce that would disagree, but what I'm saying is that for what I paid for in property taxes in Calgary versus what I see my property taxes going towards in Spruce, I see a significant difference to say, okay, I'm paying into a system that actually looks after what it's supposed to an extent. I never 100% fully agree with what government charges, whether it's a municipality, provincially, or federally. But when your taxes are actually going somewhere useful, it's easier to get on board, and it's easier, like myself, to say, okay, I'm paying into something that seems to work. The problem with the federal government is that they're collecting taxes at almost half your wages. They're taking those taxes and jet setting around the world. They're having lavish parties. We're footing the bills for their houses, their groceries, their ridiculous DEI policies, their ridiculous green initiatives, so on and so forth. We've seen corruption in contracts and scandals going out to monies being awarded to companies that charge more than 26 hours in a day when there's only 24. This is a problem, folks. And the only way forward, the only success forward for Canadians, if they want the Canada they used to know, if they want life back to the way it used to be, where your dollar went further, where security was high, where your kids could play in the streets, where your investments actually saw a decent return, the only answer I'm convinced of these days, ladies and gentlemen, for every province, not just Alberta, would be its own independence. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Do you agree with Danielle's FAFO stance on home break-ins? Do you agree that, you should be allowed to defend yourself? And, hey, if Alberta's willing to allow that to happen, would you consider moving to Alberta to have your rights more looked after? What do you think about the return on the Canada pension plan? If you're a senior on the channel, let me know your thoughts in the comments below on your whopping 1% return investment. If it's your first time here, I hope this video has earned your subscription. Make sure you hit that button down below. It helps the channel. Hit the thumbs up and a comment. It helps push this video out in the algorithm and tell people, hey, our government sucks. Check out this video. Share it out on your socials, folks. That helps as well. Join me tonight. Every week, every Friday, every Wednesday and Friday here on the channel live, twice a week now, for our live streams. Friday Night Fringe on Fridays, Unhinged Fringe on Wednesdays, where I sit down with a plethora of new co-hosts, as well as the beautiful Mrs. Fringe on Fridays, as we discuss everything that happened this week in politics, everything coming up in the week ahead, as well as Q&A back and forth within the greatest YouTube community on the platform, hands down. I look forward to chatting with you guys every single week, hearing what you have to say in those live streams. I most importantly look forward to talking to you tonight and every Wednesday and Friday here on the channel at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, live. I hope to see you guys there. It's always a good time. I look forward to seeing you tonight. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.